My name's Juliet Bly. I will explain my role in a moment, but it would be really helpful if we could just start with you introducing yourselves so I know who's here. And also if you've got experience of doing consultancy, that would be really helpful to know. Or if you've got a burning question, which I may or may not be able to answer today, but I can always take away. Thank you. So a real mix of experience. I'm seeing today as a bit of an introduction, but with signposting to more information, which includes from me. So this is an introduction to me as well, if you want to get to follow up on anything, because we haven't got that much time. But I do also want it to be an opportunity for you to start sort of playing around with how you might talk to a client about the consultancy offer that you have. Nothing serious, it's just to make it slightly more interactive. Right, I said I'd introduce myself. You may all be aware of the Business Development Office, the team that's headed by David Hartley. We cover a range of knowledge exchange activities, and I'll talk a bit more about what that means in practice. My role is focused on consultancy and CPD, although I do get involved in broader projects. But I just wanted you to be aware that we've got an IP expert. So I don't know if any of you went to the session yesterday. So Ed Cole, Kevin Maynard, people you may be aware of him. He's been around a long time working. He's now working particularly on the big cross-university projects. Lydia and her team offer enterprise support. That's particularly for students who have ideas they want to follow up. And Anna Bagesi is the Knowledge Transfer Partnership lead. So if any of you have been involved in KTPs, you'll have worked with Anna. So that's the whole team. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of context. I don't want to bore you with some of this, but I think it's helpful to understand where consultancy fits. And it is part of what we call knowledge exchange, which broadly covers a whole range of activities that universities do with the wider community, with society. And it is becoming something that government are interested in seeing how universities do this, and are beginning to measure, as you would expect, how universities do this. So just to give you the range of activities that we do here at Brooks, so consultancy, which we'll be talking about today, CPD and skills development, which is very much what Amy does in HLS, knowledge transfer partnerships, contract research, which is where a client asks you to carry out a piece of research for them, as opposed to you initiating it, if you see what I mean. And the licensing, that's all around the IP commercialisation of research. So those are the broad range of things that we do, and that's today's focus. I mentioned that the government is particularly interested. You may have heard of something called KEF, which is the Knowledge Exchange Framework, which is the third. So we've got TEF and REF, and now we've got KEF. This is very much in development at the moment, but it's a signal of how interested the government is in how universities are using their expertise and knowledge to the benefit of wider society. So people ask what we mean by consultancy, and I have to say it is quite a broad-ranging term. I like to think of it as the way that we use our skills and knowledge, our research, what we've built up, to meet the needs of a particular client. Now that could be through us going out to the clients and saying, are you interested in doing some work around this? It could be clients coming to us or doing a tender. But there are a wide range of activities that people do already, from testing to advisory roles, to doing reviews of services, to acting as expert witnesses, a whole range of different things. So when people bandy the word consultancy around, it could mean any of those things, and it does. Just a final bit of context around Brooks. This is just looking, and this is the sort of thing that the KEF is going to be measuring. As you'd expect, it comes back to money. Just to show where Brooks sits at the moment, which is that we aren't doing too badly compared to our comparator universities, but that is largely because Brookes has a centre called the Institute of Public Care, sitting with Humanities and Social Sciences, which has been operating for more than 25 years as a social care focused consultancy and CPD centre. And they turn over between £1.5 and £2 million a year. So they're big, established. They don't do any research. They're not academic focused. They're a centre set up purely to do consultancy and CPD. So they're not the norm within Brookes. However, within Brookes there are other centres. So Michael's mentioned his do you call it a centre?
A unit.
A unit, yes. Then we have CPD focused centres like Amy's, and then we have Oxcats, which is a new one that Kim Chapman is managing. I was hoping Kim would be here today. So there are smaller centres dotted all around the university. And what I always recommend is that if you have a question about consultancy and you can't get hold of me, often the people who are leading these centres actually know as much, if not more, about the nitty-gritty of doing consultancy in the Brookes context. So they're good people to get to know. Why do it? Michael, can I ask you why you do it?
Why I still do it.
Why you still do it? Despite everything, why do you still do it?
Yeah, that's a good one. I struggle with that. We were written into the Brookes policy a very long time. A couple of chancellors ago, we were part of the policy, so we see ourselves as kind of part of social responsibility. We're providing a service that's helping businesses in the community. Most of us are in Oxfordshire, so I think that is our main motive.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment on why they do it? People who've done it?
I find it quite. It was a really interesting thing to work with the car manufacturers and so on, because they had a particular problem that they could articulate, but they also had some other things that they didn't know necessarily what the problem was, and they said, go and find these things. And they said, it doesn't matter whether you've got the solution or not, you need to tell us what the problems are. So there was a big freedom to it. So it wasn't like publishing an article in the journal where you have to have found a difference, for instance. And the other nice thing about it was the rate at which our recommendations were taken on board. So we would find something, Margaret Harris and myself, and then Naomi King and Louise Bunce and Sarah Lansbridge, all working on it, would give them back the results and it would be incorporated, rather than the sort of the really long time lag of doing some research, going through the review process, and then 2 years later your paper is in print.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mention at the beginning that my background, because I started this role a year ago, last June. I'd spent 10 years actually working in IPC, the consultancy and CPD unit, so I've been doing consultancy. I very much agree with what you said, although I would say sometimes it's really frustrating going back and finding that people haven't actually done what you said. So it works both ways. That's great. I mean, these images, for what they're worth, the top one is impact. I also sit on there's a small group that is looking at the REF impact case studies, and I've been asked to join that to just comment on them, because impact is very much about what we hope we do with consultancy. And for me, for a researcher, I would have thought that would have been quite important. So impact is, I mean, as well as for you individually. The middle one is around societal impact, so actually making a difference. So the sorts of things we were both talking about. It doesn't do your profile any harm either, I have to say, because you are out and about talking to people, developing a reputation for being an expert in a particular field. And actually, as you develop that, you will then attract more business, because people will hear about you. They'll have heard about the fantastic work that you did, and they'll come to you and say, "Can you do that for us this time?" It does. I mean, I know this in terms of the postgrad stuff that we used to do at IPC. It can feed into your teaching, So you can actually learn from the consultancy you do, or even get case studies that you can use in your teaching. And similarly, it can feed into your research. And it is also, I mean, I put the dreaded pound sign there, it is also about money. The university has as one of its aims to diversify its income streams, and consultancy is part of that. We'll talk in a moment also about some of the things that the new consultancy policy will be introducing about how academics are paid. And that, you know, there is a financial element to this, which we say I'll come on to in a moment. So for me, those are the main reasons for doing it. So some of you, I may have mentioned that we're in the process of reviewing the consultancy policy that has been around since 2005. I was hoping to launch the new one in April, but further discussions were needed about some elements of it, shall we say. So it's been delayed. I hope that it won't be long. We're almost there now, second time round. What we've tried to do with this, the consultancy policy, is to bring it up to date to reflect things that weren't in place in 2005. So workload planning wasn't in place then. We've tried to make it slightly more responsive to the needs of people trying to deliver consultancy out there. It claims, it aims to provide a framework within which people who want to do consultancy and CPD can operate. And it includes a whole series of guidance notes, if you like, about how to do it. The one change that, well, I think there's probably two changes. One is that it's very clear that the responsibility for managing and delivering consultancy rests with faculties. It isn't some central thing sitting over there that's driving this. It rests with faculties. That was actually in the early version, but I don't think it was quite as clear. The other thing that you'll notice on there is that in the old consultancy policy, although I don't think this was actually ever monitored, private consultancy was limited to 20 days a year. So that's consultancy that academics or other staff actually would do in their own name. The new consultancy policy says there isn't a limit to how much you do, but you have to do it in your own time, and it can't be under the Brooks brand or with any involvement of Brooks facilities, resources, assets or anything. So it sets out a clear list of things that you need to think about. So that is coming shortly. When we do get to the point where it's finally approved, I'll be going around to each faculty, talking to faculty exec, then any other departmental groups who want me to come and talk to them, because we do want to promote this, and it'll be a sort of version of today, but slightly more focused, with more detail about what's in the policy. So it's a bit of a watch this space. Apologies, when we arranged this, we thought the policy would have been launched, but yeah, we're not quite there. Does anyone want to ask any questions about policy? No.
I just wonder how you can divorce yourself entirely from Brooks when you're working as a private consultant.
Well, that means that there's a set of things that you have to meet, and you have to get approval, if you like, that you sign off that you've met them. It is that you're not using Brooks brand, that the client is aware that you're not doing it as a Brooks member of staff. You can't use the venue or any other assets that are linked with Brooks, and that you're taking all the risk. It's the risk element, the bit that Brooks are particularly interested in, and you don't do it in Brooks' time. So it's about setting that boundary between what Brooks is responsible for and what you as an individual are responsible for. Right, what I was going to suggest is that for me, from the work that I've done, one of the things that I've had to get my head around is how you describe what it is you do. So what is the expertise that you are offering a potential client? And I thought it might just be helpful if people just try that with their neighbour. And now for people who are doing it, so Michael should be able to have it off pat, he ought to be able to say, this is what I do. For others, this is something new, and you just might, it's just to play around with it. So if I was coming to you as a potential client, and I said, you do something in psychology, but I'm not quite sure it's going to work with what I want. Tell me a bit about what you do. Just try doing that. So pair up, just for a couple of minutes, and take it. Both of you try it. So make it up. So this is the what. What is it that you offer? Okay, can I stop you where you've got to? So was particularly for people who've not done any consultancy, how was that? Was it a pretty easy one?
Yeah.
It was very interesting. We come actually from, we come from a different fields. So the exchange of knowledge was actually very interesting. And even though we just chatted for like a few minutes, I think it's already kind of coming with some ideas. So I think it's very inspirational.
And was it easy to describe your area of expertise? Someone else group?
Yeah, a little bit for me because we have been doing testing, so we have been meeting clients. So it's
So you've got something sort of contained that's.
yeah.
It is much easier if you've got something like a test that you offer.
Mm.
If it's a little bit sort of.
Yeah. But if it's something different, then we don't straight away accept to do it. We'll have to carry out research around it to decide.
Okay. So the next question, that if you're thinking that consultancy could be something that you could be doing, is understanding who your clients could be. Do people have a view about that at the moment? Have you thought about who you would be? Who's your market? Anyone want to?
Just depends really for us. I think there's a variety of expertise in psychology, but some of the things that we can do are to design a particular study or a particular piece of research. We've got people who can evaluate from a variety of different perspectives, whether it's people who are using technology, people who are using questionnaire design, people who are constructing interviews and then analysing all of that and feeding it back. So there are some who've got a particular area that they would like to work in, but we've probably got a whole bunch of people out.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have chosen to have done electric vehicles, but that came up and we thought, well, actually,
Yeah.
in fact, we said explicitly, we're not transport psychologists, and they said, we know, but we know what the transport psychologists think. So what we want is a fresh pair of eyes of people who've got theoretical knowledge, who've got a good knowledge of theory, good knowledge of methods, good evaluation. So we want your view on it. So
it's quite tricky particularly from a marketing point of view, to understand where to focus that then. So you've got a bit of expertise in the car industry, but that's not particularly your focus. And then you say you've got people who have got expertise or experience in working in different sectors. So,
loads.
yeah.
So
So if you were starting, I know you're not starting from scratch, but it would make it quite hard to think, where am I going to focus my energies? Am I going to try and get my work there, or am I going to keep it really broad and just see what happens?
I think in a way is saying, how do people respond to or relate to so-and-so? Because what we have is that's our key thing, is the psychological knowledge. So you're going to people, or people coming to you, if they want to know how a person reacts to something or other. And that's something that perhaps a marketer wouldn't be able to do, or a sociologist necessarily.
No, I was thinking more in terms of, if you want to build your consultancy, you need to think about, it comes on a bit to the question of how, how are you going to get that work?
Well, that is the thing that I'm sort of
dealing with. And there are two routes broadly. One is responding to tenders, and one is building relationships and having word of mouth and that sort of thing. And less so with the tenders, but certainly with the relationships, becoming known for being the experts in a particular area. It is much easier if you've got a sector that you're working in. So Michael, you said you're Oxfordshire, but are you focused in a particular way, or
We've tried that in the past. So ironically, a few years ago, we really enjoyed working with charities, and they're usually in the most need for energy, carbon reduction.
Yeah.
And I remember we ran a series of events here at the university where we got the estates people to come out, and rather than hard sell, we just said, this is what we know, what do you think? And I had a call yesterday from a charity that we just happened to have done a bit of work with at one of their shops in Headington. And it's their estates manager, and I distinctly remember inviting them, nothing. And then, so timing is everything, and you just never know. It is about that reputation in the building, and it's quite random. What you want to have and what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with tenders, you can suddenly find yourself being drawn in a particular direction that you would never have predicted, but you went for it because it was a piece of work that you thought it sounded interesting. But I think, particularly if you're beginning on this journey, it's helpful to, even if it's just provisionally for the, say, for the next year, we're going to focus in this particular direction. If something else crops up, we'll do it, obviously. But just so you can get to know that market. So if it were the car industry, you can understand who might be interested, and where they are, and who the key people are, and that sort of thing.
It depends what they're after, that's the thing. So if I'm, after a while, then their focus is on something slightly different, which is battery technology or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Then we tried to get involved with the autonomous vehicle stuff, but again, they were more interested at that point on the technology. Now, they may, at some point, want something about the person in the car, but we've there's a lot of time that's gone now since that work, the electric vehicle work.
Absolutely. And I mean, the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really important are people who've already got experience or a particular interest in a particular area, who may have contacts, because that's something to start with. So if you know you've got contacts in a particular industry, sector, whatever, use them. So either use them to find out whether they know of people who might be interested, or try and build business with them. It's trying to find a way of moving beyond, yes, we think we could do consultancy in this area, to actually delivering it, is mapping that route, if you like, to getting the business. And it will vary depending on what it is you're offering. So I suppose what I'm saying is it's really important to think this through. Not necessarily have a plan, but just be clear how it is you're going to get to the point where you're getting consultancy, if that's what you want to do. The question I haven't covered really is the why, and that's it's related to what we were talking about earlier. It's how are you going to convince these people, whoever they are, that you're the right people to do this? Because fundamentally that's what you're doing. So this is where it becomes very different to research, because what you're basically doing is trying to convince people to buy your services. And as any of us do, if we're trying to buy a builder, a decorator, whatever, we want someone who's going to do what we want at the right price and with the right level of skill. And that's what we're talking about here. So it is useful to think through and try and articulate why people should come to you. And I suspect, Michael, people come to you because they've heard of you and they know you do a good job.
Sometimes it's just, well, Mark said it, it's problems kind of in front of people. They have a very short memory. And if you can solve that problem, and it's sometimes very specific to one role within the organisation. So if you, so it's very hard. We've tried business planning around that and to have a longer term plan, but then it all falls down when you want to synchronise that.
No, I'm talking about thinking about how you actually get out there. So not having. I mean, you can have a business plan if you want, but just thinking through. We think we've got something that people out in society and local communities will be interested in. So how do you get that out there? And I think what I'm saying is use your contacts, use your profile.
The business school does it in reverse, if I understand. I don't know if they do this anymore, but they used to do kind of showcase events where they take their contacts, the business development people within organizations, and say, we've got 6 presentations lined up. And they were usually academics, just kind of saying, this is how we can help generally, not responding to anything specific.
Absolutely.
Over some nice food. And that seemed to work really well for me. I don't know if our faculties would be into that, but I always thought that would be good.
No, I completely agree. So you could, there are events that happen in Brooks that are focused on local business. There's one coming up in September called Venture Fest, which is very much focused at the local business sector. And part of the purpose, I mean, Brooks is hosting it, but part of the purpose for Brooks is to promote Brooks. And there will be stalls where different people, including HLS, I would assume, will be saying, this is what we do, this is not only this is what we do, but thinking, and this is how we could help you. Because it's going to be businesses, innovators, funders who are going to be there. And you know, it could be that you have other public external facing events to promote, generate interest. I think that what I'm trying to say is just think about this. I'm not saying do anything. Develop a plan if that's helpful for you. But this is the sort of things that you need to think about. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time exploring the difference, and this is coming particularly from my experience working in a consultancy, CPD, admittedly in the public sector, but from that environment, coming into an academic environment, and my conversations that I've had with people in the last year about some of the challenges they've had working with clients. And this may be stating the obvious, so apologies if it is, but I think it's worth just being aware of this. The first thing I want to talk about is language. We all tend to create a language within our working environment that everyone in that environment understands and can relate to. It isn't necessarily what people outside that environment can relate to. And I think that is particularly the case if you're taking academic work and translating that to external environments, society. And the sorts of times when that can be a problem are in meetings with clients, particularly before you get work, where you're talking using your normal sort of language and people just don't understand what you're talking about. But it also happens in reverse. So people, whichever industry or businesses you're working in will have a language and acronyms. Everyone has acronyms. So just be aware of that difference and not make assumptions about what people will understand. The next big challenge that people find is around time or timing. The two areas here. One is in terms of responding to a request, whether that's a tender or people asking for a proposal. It doesn't need me to say that the Brooks processes are not quick. Often clients or potential clients expect something fairly quickly. So if someone were to ring you up and say, can you write a proposal to do this piece of work for me? They wouldn't expect to wait 4 months before they get something. It's a challenge. I haven't got the answer. One of the things I'm trying to do is to speed things up behind in terms of processes, but it's not going to happen quickly. So just be aware of that. Related to that is the expectations question, which can be about timing. How quickly can you respond? It can also be about how quickly they respond, of course. But it can also affect things like if you're being asked to write a report. This isn't an academic piece of work. They will have expectations, requirements of what you write that could feel a bit alien because it's not how you would normally write. It's really important to be clear at the beginning what it is they want. And what I would traditionally do is to write a draft and test it with them, particularly if there's anything political in it. I mean, political is a small p. So if there's anything within the organisation that you may not be aware of but will affect how that report is received, you want to test that with your client to make sure that you don't scupper the whole piece of work just because you aren't aware of it. You're nodding your head.
I'm doing a bit of single-use plastics with one of the councils, and they weren't able to articulate at the beginning, but we knew there were going to be some key political issues because it is a political institution ultimately. So we have a draft knocking around, and I've put as much time aside as I could, but it's taken 3 extra months than it was
Yeah.
supposed to, just because they want to get it right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not shocked, but it's kind of blown the timeline of the whole project. But
Yeah, no. And the other thing that you've said there, which I think is really important, is that people may not be aware at the beginning of the issues that then crop up around expectations later on. And that's something that you build with experience. So you're able to advise a client at the beginning that, you know, they've said they want something by this time, and their approval process internally, because they'll probably have some internal approval process for the final report, is going to take this amount of time. You get to the point where you can say, well, I think we ought to allow an extra month for that. Or have you thought about who you need to talk to make sure that this is the right sort of product? But that comes with time, and it comes also as you get to know particular clients. The bottom one, which is money, and the top one, which is meant to signify control, are related. I think there is a difference from working as a relatively independent academic doing research to handing over control of a project to a client who's paying money for it. And it's a different relationship, and you just need to think about it, because you are actually providing a service to them, fundamentally. So that's around client communication. The other thing I wanted to just mention is the different approach you can take to your projects. And this comes back to that question about how do you want to build consultancy, really. So it could be that you're asked to do a one-off piece of work, you do it brilliantly, you get fantastic feedback, and that's it. And you just sit back and wait. And that could be right. It's not saying that's wrong, but that could be what you want to do. Really important, I have to say, get feedback, because you'll use that subsequently as part of how you promote what you do. It may be that if you're doing a tender or writing a proposal, you can quote a satisfied client. So get client feedback. It's one of the things I'd emphasise. So that's one approach. The other approach is where you do a piece of work, you do it fantastically, you get fantastic feedback, and you carry on the conversation with that client. And you explore with them whether there are other problems that you can help identify or solve. So it's about how you treat the end of the project, basically. So if you work with a client and you think that there's potential there for you to do ongoing work, you just need to build that relationship and keep at it, work at it a bit. It may be they have contacts as well, that other people who might be interested, or so encourage them to talk about your work. I just wanted to flag that as something to think about. As you'd expect, in terms of doing consultancy, there are a whole series of technical issues that you need to be aware of. I'll show you in a moment a new staff intranet that we have, which will help with this. But just for the sake of it, just to highlight a few things. Oxford Brookes, as in the university, is a charity and is restricted as to what it can do and can't do. Therefore, there's something called OBEL, Oxford Brookes Enterprise Limited, through which all consultancy goes. It doesn't make any difference at all, other than in terms of the contract. So just be aware of it, just for interest, really. I don't know whether people who have done consultancy have used RBDO's contract manager, Kevin Henderson and Rob. I would recommend that you, even if you're not sure whether it should go to them or go to legal services, always go to them first. They will say whether or not it's beyond their remit, and can help take it through to legal services. Legal services broadly focus on the much larger, more complex contracts, and can be slower, which is why I recommend you go to Kevin Henderson first. IP ownership may be part of what you negotiate with the contract. Talk to Ed Cole, who's the IP manager, if you have any doubt about it. University costing tool, currently PFACT about to go to Work Tribal, is that what it's called?
Work Tribe.
Work Tribe, yeah. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. it has to be used as the approval process. A piece of work that I would like to do fairly soon is to look at the approval process for consultancy, but that's to come. The final thing I want to say is that the costing tool comes up with FEC cost. You don't have to charge that, so the price to the client doesn't have to be full economic cost. And that's the case now. The new policy is going to give clearer guidance about that and give the scope that each faculty has for varying the degree to which overheads are recovered. And part of the intention of that is to try and free things up a bit so that you can maybe go do work with charities who can't afford to pay FEC. You can maybe do a bit of not quite a loss leader, but you can price something slightly more cheaply just to get into a new sector. So it's about trying to free things up a bit. But when the new policy's launched, there'll be more information about that.
But those decisions will be at the level of the faculty.
Faculty, yeah. Right. There is a staff intranet that will be properly launched when the consultancy policy is launched. However, it's there at the moment. And what we did is we decided to put it up and just do a bit of a soft launch. So I'm telling people about it. If you spot things that don't work or are wrong, please let me know, because this is very much a sort of in development. Now, the quick way, I don't know if you can see, the quick way to get to it, you can go through the staff intranet pages, which I think is, well, it's the longer way of getting to it. Or if you go to business and employers, so you recognise, that's off the home page. Under business and employers, there's a staff support tab. And obviously you'll need to put in your P number and everything to get into it if you're not there. The home page looks like that. So it's the Knowledge Exchange intranet. It provides information about the whole range of Knowledge Exchange activities, including definitions. It includes some of the stuff that we talked about how you think about who your clients are going to be and how you develop relationships and that sort of thing. And it includes resources. Now the resources are policies that you might want to use for tenders, but tell me if there's anything missing, because we'll just add to it. It includes links to other staff intranets which are relevant, but you may not think to look, because one of the things I find with the Brooks web pages it's quite complicated to find things. It also has on it a section on consultancy. So as well as lots of general things, we've got specific sections on consultancy, CPD, contract research, commercialisation of research and KTPs. They're fairly thin at the moment in terms of information, but it is a good place to look. So we've got the old consultancy policy there. We've got a quick guide to setting up a project, which just tells you the things that you need to think about. And we've got some case studies. So if you want to see the sorts of things that people do.
Can you distinguish a bit, I guess, between consultancy and contract research?
Okay, so...
Are there areas where actually they would look like the same thing?
Yeah. But these aren't... broadly for consultancy, it's about using your knowledge that you've built up through doing research, etc., for a client to solve a problem, to deliver something. Contract research is where that client says, I want to understand why people don't buy electric vehicles. What are the behaviours going on there? Can you do a piece of research for me? I'll pay you this amount. Okay. So that's broadly the difference. It's blurry.
Yeah, does it have any implications financially in terms of the way we put things through PFACs and things like that or not?
It does, in that I don't think contract research goes under the consultancy tab on PFAC. I think
there's no...
But other than that, and the rules about doing research ethics and that sort of stuff apply, which they wouldn't for consultancy. Other than that, it's doing what you would call a piece of research, but for a client, as opposed to bringing your knowledge and I mean, it'd be interesting to know what you did.
Well,
For BMW.
it's a mix of the two, actually.
Yeah,
You know,
and that's
same thing with the
yeah.
spread smart stuff. That's going to be a mix of the two as well.
yeah, and that's quite common. So I
But
my
they had recruited the participants themselves in each case,
yeah.
so they were already there available for us.
So you were talking to them. What was the research? And
Well, they had a pool of people who were going to drive these cars already that had gone through a selection process, and then they were the participant pool for us. They wanted independence from the data collection and the analysis.
Yeah.
It's not straightforward, is it?
if I put my forget my current role, if I put my previous role hat on, I would say, don't get hung up about the difference. You're doing a piece of work for the client,
Yeah.
which will involve a bit of research and involve a bit of something else. It doesn't really matter. The issue is the systems. So I think that's something for maybe for me to take away and explore a bit more with Sarah Taylor about how she would see the distinction.
Sorry, in case of intellectual property, especially in contract research, does it lie with the client?
That's for negotiation. Basically, I mean, I think often it will, because they're funding it and they want that information. But that's part of what you negotiate. And if you get to that point of the negotiation, bring in Ed Cole, because he acts as your sort of power to your elbow in terms of what's right for the university. Any other questions the last minute? As I said, this is very much a sort of, well, it's an introduction. It can't be any more than that at this stage. But please, you know, if you want to meet me and have a conversation to follow up anything, please just shout. That's my job. I'm here to do that. I will be coming around talking to, I think, to departments within HLS. Each faculty has said how they want me to launch the consultancy policy. So it varies from faculty, but I will be out and about talking about the consultancy policy when it comes, and that's another opportunity for you to ask me about this. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.